Hello YouTube. So it's 2025 and that means it's time for rack tour number 5. So this one's a bit of a milestone for me, being my 5th rack tour, but also being basically 12 years since I got my first real server and started assembling this crazy rack contraption I have here. And it's also a bit of a personal change for me. In December I started a new job and now I'm more of a modern AWS DevOps engineer role. So I'm no longer working with, physical servers and kind of bare metal on my day job. So that adds a little bit of a, call it sentimentality to having my own, rack here at home now. It feels kind of special to still have my own hardware and be close to the hardware in a way that it never did before. So it also gave me a nice raise though, which let me do some of these upgrades you're about to see and that I'm happy to share off. So without further ado, here we go. So there's the rack. Get your fan noise ASMR. So the first neat thing, I have a sub panel now. So this is a 60 amp sub panel fed off our new 200 amp house service. I've got a pair of 30 amp 120 volt breakers that go down to the plugs and a 20 amp for the air conditioner. And of course those plugs, 30 amp twist lock, high quality, dedicated plug for the air conditioner. This has been, the single biggest improvement in a long time for my house and for the rack and everything. Big peace of mind too. So for the context, my house was built in the early 1970s. And we still had the original fuse panel, and it was a fuse panel. Edison screw fuses for the branch circuits, bar fuses for the main kind of big things. 100 amp service. And when I first started, doing the server rack in earnest, probably 8 years ago, I needed more power than I could get out of the normal plugs that we put here in the basement, and I needed a circuit, and there was one Edison screw plug left. So I put a 20 amp fuse in it, ran the 20 amp wiring out over here and gave myself the plugs. And for probably 4 years now, I've been running that 20 amp circuit at the ragged edge. It's been pulling 18 amps all the time, which is basically your red line for 24/7 usage of a circuit. And I'd constantly be worried, am I running too much stuff? Using a bit too much power because the CPU spiking. My UPS is discharged and I have to charge them now. Am I going to be using too much power? Go to bed at night worrying about that 20 amp circuit being overloaded. So we finally bit the bullet, upgraded the house, added this sub panel, added another sub panel in the garage for tools and stuff. Totally worth it. I'm so happy now. I can have full peace of mind that I have more than enough power here for everything to be safe and efficient. Even if I want to add more stuff, which I'm not planning to, well, kind of. There's some high power draw things that I'll get to in a little bit, but I have the room now, and I'm really happy about that. So next I'm going to talk about something that I don't think I've actually shared off in one of my videos yet, which is how my wireless works. So sitting up top here, I have 2 access points. So in my house, I actually have 4 access points total. There's 2 down here, which is the left rear basement, and there's 2 up in the front right upper floor bedroom. So basically in opposite corners in 3 dimensions of the house. And I did that because after, experimenting for many years, that was the most optimal way to get full coverage. That also covered my backyard patio, which is outside that window there. So these kind of cover that and the basement. And then also my garage, where I also spend a lot of time. Which is covered by the upstairs front ones. So that arrangement works well. But why do I have 4 instead of just 2? Well, I have 2 different functions. So the first one, the one on the left here, that's a Unify UAP AC Pro. So that's my main client network access points. And of course, there's a pair of them. And that's my phone, my laptop, all the stuff I want to be fast. It's AC, so it's 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Really good. It's only got a couple devices on it, main devices, but that was the key. I want them to be fast. I don't want to be lagging out on my laptop when I'm doing something or lagging out on my phone or whatever. The other one is an older UAP LR, which is only 2.4 gigahertz wireless N, and that's for all my home automation devices. So at this point I have 40, maybe 45 different home automation devices, all Wi-Fi based. So I have like smart plugs, smart switches, my ESP32 based super sensor presence sensors. I have a few other ESP home random controllers like my solar controller, all that sort of stuff. So I have those just connect to their own pair of Wi-Fi access points to keep that traffic off of the main network and let my devices go fast. Well, all the home automation stuff can just connect, and it works pretty reliably. Yeah, these access points are designed for way more than 40 clients. I mean, 20 each, basically. So yeah, they work great. Also up there is the backup hard drive that I'll cover when I get to the backup server. But first, on the subject of the rack, I know in the last video I think I mentioned that I wanted to build a new rack, and I never did get to it last year. It's just I want to shrink it by 6 inches. It's just a little too far out to comfortably get servers in and out, but it's hard to justify rebuilding the whole thing. It's a big effort, so I haven't yet. Maybe this year I'll get to it, who knows. And I can shrink the height at the same time because it doesn't need to be this high anymore. But yeah, I have my main patches here, 1 gig patches to my 1 gig switch, which is a Quanta LB4M 48 port 1 gig switch with 2 10 gig uplinks. And then below that I have the 10 gig switch, which is the Quanta LB6M, so 24 port 10 gig switch. They're connected together with a pair of 10 gig and then a 1 gig management back to the 1 gig. And you know, all my connections here are kind of still the same. I have my internet connections, so I have 3 internet connections. I have a DOCSIS cable connection, I have a fixed wireless 4G connection, and I have a DSL connection. They all do slightly different things. They provide both redundancy and some separation of functions, but those come in these orange ones in separate VLANs and go to the routers. Those 4 access points, the green connections. The blue connections are for client devices, specifically my 3D printer and my PlayStation 3 that I drum on. These 2 yellow ones are management for the routers, which I'll get to in a minute. I got the 2 pairs of connections to the routers, main connections to the routers in LACP pairs. These yellow ones are all management too, mostly to the iDRACs and 1 to the Raspberry Pi in the back of the rack. And lastly, 1 gig to the testing hypervisor cluster. So that's all the same as it was. Next up we have the routers. So again, these are the same as they were. They're these kind of low-cost Chinese, like Intel Celeron N2000, whatever they are, mini PC boxes with like the 4 Ethernet ports. I think they're 2.5 gig, but I only run them at 1 gig. Stuck a fan on them to stop them from overheating. So these have, you know, the pair of connections in. They have a CARP direct connect between them so that doesn't rely on the switches. And then I have that management connection coming in. So how I run these, I have Debian on the base box, and then inside of that I run a KVM VM, which runs FreeBSD, which has these 3 connections, the 3 white connections direct passed into it. So I can do VLANs and stuff directly in the VM. And that runs the actual router functionality. And I've been asked more than once, why do I do that? And there's, well, two reasons, but one main reason is that these boxes don't have out-of-band management. And it's happened to me enough times to be annoying that I've done something wrong, either a config error or I stop a service and I lock myself out of my router. And if I just ran it bare metal on here without out-of-band management, I'd have to, you know, come down here, pull out a monitor and keyboard, plug them in. It's a huge hassle. So by giving myself this management layer of a Debian system that does nothing except run the VM, I always have a way to get in under that router, and I can console into it, I can forcibly reboot it, all that kind of stuff without any hassle. The other reason was when I first set these up, there was like a CPU bug running FreeBSD on these boxes. I'm pretty sure that's been long since fixed, but that factored into me setting it up that way, and hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Another cool thing about these that's worth mentioning is how I'm powering them. So in the back there I have a pair of power bricks. 1 came with each box, and then each box has a single DC input. But I want redundant power. Well, luckily with DC power you can just combine and split at will. So what I've actually got here is this little gross Molex contraption that takes the two outputs, combines them together. I got the fan connectors there, and then the power to the boxes. So in effect, I've given myself redundant power supplies for these two boxes. And the power bricks that came with them are powerful enough to power, one of them can power both of these no problem. So it is truly redundant power supplies. So if you got yourself a pair of these boxes and you were wondering if you could do that, you absolutely can do that with DC power. Just combine and split circuits, and you can effectively give yourself redundant power supplies to these sort of boxes really, really easily. All right, that's the routers covered. Let's move on to the storage server. So these have had, well, they're still the same, you know, Dell PowerEdge R720XDs that I got 2 years ago. So you've seen them in the last 2 rack tours if you've seen those. But there's been some nice upgrades to what's inside of them. So they still have the single, I think it's a 12-core Ivy Bridge era processor. I did give them more RAM now. They have 96 gigs of DDR3 RAM in them now. Ceph and ZFS are always hungry for more RAM. But I added some more drives to them. So first, in the hard drive front, late last year, you know, December, I started noticing my usage was creeping up above 80% again. So despite the last video last year saying I didn't need any more storage, well, my Linux ISO collection continues to grow, so naturally I was running out of storage again. And luckily in January, there was like a post-Christmas sale on some Seagate external 14 terabyte drives, and there was a really good deal. Like, it was not quite half the price of a new 14 terabyte Western Digital Red these days, which these have gone up in price somehow in Canada. But like not quite half the price, but pretty close, so I couldn't pass up that deal. So I got 3 of them and added them, re-added the 8 terabyte drive, so I was able to get myself more than enough space to make me comfortable for probably another year at my growth rate. I seem to be growing by about 14 plus 7, about 21 terabytes a year, something like that. So slowly but surely filling up these chassis. I've got 2 bays left, and I want to always keep 1 bay for expansion purposes, so I can do one more 14 terabyte upgrade and then swap the 8 in before I have to start taking the 8s out, but whatever. The other main upgrade to these is I had been noticing performance issues for a very long time. So I have basically 3 data sets here. The first is the CephFS metadata pool, which is controlling all the metadata for the giant CephFS volume that this Ceph cluster is providing. It was getting really, really slow, like to the point where if I tried to do a large DU, disk usage command, against this cluster, it could take, you know, tens of minutes to even over an hour, maybe even 2 hours sometimes to do that, pull all that metadata. It was just unreasonably slow. And I also have the other 2 pools where I have the bulk data, the Linux ISOs, which I store copies equals 2. So there's 1 copy on this server and 1 copy on this server, or 1 on this and 1 on this, that sort of thing. But I also have my C3 data, which I store 1 copy on all 3 of the servers, and that's for the more important shared storage, like my email storage, my own cloud data, all that sort of shared storage that needs to be really available, more so than the Linux ISOs. So that was also getting really slow. So I finally bit the bullet and bought myself a trio of Intel DCP 3700 2 terabyte, half height, half length PCIe card SSDs. Really good, found a really good deal on them finally after searching for ages. And, you know, bought them, stuck them in here, moved all that, the metadata and the copies equals 3 data to them, and it's been night and day performance improvement. Now my DUs are down under 30 seconds, even for large volumes, like really huge performance improvement, which I've been very happy about. So now the physical, like the spinning hard drives, are only for that bulk storage, those Linux ISOs, and all the important small files are on the fast NVMe. All right, moving on. The white box backup server is still the same overkill box it's been for ages. It's got the like 16-core Broadwell era. It's got 32 gigs of RAM. I forgot 96 gigs of RAM in these now. I think I said that. Never mind. Problem with stream of consciousness videos. So yeah, 32 gigs of RAM in this guy. Still got it's got four 8 terabyte hard drives in a RAID Z, so RAID 5 with ZFS. And this stores my backups. So I'd like to have a 3-2-1 backup solution, but I don't. It's not reasonable with my internet connections to back up off-site. But I used to have a 3-copy setup. So I have main data. I store a backup on this, and that I'm doing nightly snapshots in ZFS. So I'm storing a month of nightly snapshots and then a year of monthly snapshots. So I have historical data. So that's the second copy. And then each night after the main backup finishes, I ship the latest snapshot up to the USB hard drive. So I do have 3 copies. And one of the cool things I'm doing with that, if we go back here, that hard drive is actually on a smart switch connected to my Home Assistant. So what I do is I have my backup script, just fire a webhook to Home Assistant to turn on that hard drive. It'll copy the data to it, which takes about 15 minutes on average, and then fire a webhook to turn off the hard drive. First, that's great because in effect, it's like it's a hot spare, like a hot online backup drive, but it's not. Like it's convenient to turn on and off. It's all automated, but this drive is physically powered off 99% of the day, which means if there is ever a grab and go scenario, I can literally grab it and go, not worry about a head crash or something like that because I grabbed it too quickly while it's powered on. Nope, it's just off most of the time. Only powers on when I need it to. And that will also help me if there's ever any sort of major corruption or issue with the server, like if it shorts out and blows up its USB bus, well, that's physically powered off. It's not going to hurt it. Or, ransomware on Linux, I'm not going to hit that because it's physically powered off. So I always have that, third copy of all the really important data, all that copies equals 3 stuff. It's all on there as a backup. All right, next up, we got my primary hypervisor cluster. This is still the exact same as it was. So the quick overview. So these are some Dell PowerEdge R630 boxes. They've got a pair of 16-core Broadwell era CPUs. They've got 512 gigs of RAM in each one of them. Massive overkill. But hypervisors, I can give them as much RAM as I want, as much CPU as I want. Got a pair of 200 gig Intel DCS 3700 drives for the system disks and a pair of 800 gig DCS 3700 drives for the data. So these run my PVC hypervisor, which unfortunately, one thing I liked about my previous job that I've now left is that I was effectively not developing PVC for them, but by using it at that job, I kind of had an excuse to work on it all the time. Now I don't really, so I haven't done too much with PVC in the last, 4 months. But I am pretty close to a 1.0 release. I think that's going to happen at some point when I get around to it this year. I'm basically feature complete as far as I'm concerned. I can't think of anything else I need to add to it that isn't, some weird esoteric feature that will take me 6 months to develop. So they just run, they do their thing. But yeah, PVC, is reaching full maturity, I think, and I'm running it all the time on these still. And the Ceph for that on those drives. And, it's sitting at 50% capacity and about 70 VMs, so I'm still sitting pretty with this. Not too much of a big change there. I'll skip the next improvement because that's the big one. The testing hypervisor cluster for PVC, same kind of idea. I've got the 3 R430s here. They've got a really anemic low-end CPU in them and like 32 gigs of RAM. Not very much RAM. But they're just for testing PVC. And again, they're on because I have actually been testing some things, getting ready kind of for that 1.0 release. But now that I'm not super power constrained, I'm not really worried about these being on. They can just be on all the time. And junk servers, the UPSs, still the pair of 2200 volt amp UPSs there. Those are still pretty good, especially now that I have the 2 circuits. I'm much more comfortable with the way those are running. But now let's get into the really, really nice thing that I've added. This was a couple months ago. Part of the, wage increase of the new job was I was able to go out and buy this guy. So this is a PowerEdge R730. So this is base 4.0, I think. That server seems to get upgraded more than any other server because I directly interface with it the most. But yeah, so what was happening last year, I had the base in one of the R630s with a pair of Tesla T4s in it. Now, I unfortunately had to give those back to their rightful owner. And that left me with a pair of P4s. Yeah, Tesla P4s, which are the generation older. They don't perform as well. They have half the RAM. So I was thinking about getting a larger GPU. And the reasons for that are another thing. Last year I talked about not really being that into AI. Well, then DeepSeek R1 happened and Stable Diffusion got really, really good suddenly, all of a sudden. So I've actually really piqued my interest back into Gen AI stuff. So that combination, me wanting a bigger GPU and wanting, you know, basically the ability to run something that big reasonably, led me to just being like, I'll just buy an R730. Might as well, because this box, it's not the XL obviously with only the 8 drives, so this is configured with it's got a pair of double width full height ports in it, or slots in it, with EPS power to run those kind of higher end 400-ish watt GPUs, or 300-ish, somewhere around there, watt GPUs. But it's also got 3 half height, half length slots that fit the P4s perfectly. However, I get the server, I get it all set up, and I'm like, okay, it's time to buy a GPU for this. And it turns out that I'm not the only person who's gotten really into generative AI in the last 6 months. So I was hoping to buy a P40 or maybe a T40. Yeah, those are not cheap anymore. I think the cheapest one I saw recently was $600 for a P40 from China, Canadian dollars. And then I bought it, and the guy messaged me and was like, oh, by the way, I actually don't have any of these. It's like, why is your listing up? And then that happened 2 more times. Anyways, I'm not going to rant about that in this video. So needless to say, I could not get my hands on a big beefy GPU to do more AI stuff, which sucks. So what I did instead is I just took my old 1660 GTX out of storage, pulled the fan shroud off of it so it would physically fit in here because that card is way too tall. And now I'm running my little AI server, as I'm calling it now. It's still base, it's still my desktop in the cloud, but it's got 3 GPUs in it. So the 1660 does my virtual gaming stuff for the rare time when I want to play Civ or Skyrim or City Skylines. And it also does a little bit of the transcoding for Jellyfin. You know, got to transcode those Linux ISOs. And then I have the first P4, which is also doing transcoding. It's prioritized for transcoding, but for some reason the P4 performs really terribly for some formats sometimes. So I'm not going to get into the details, but suffice to say, I also use the first P4 for transcoding. But I also use that one for the faster whisper, which does all my voice control for the Home Assistant stuff I do. And that I've been running for many, many years now, and it works great. Well, 2 years now, since 2023, the year of the voice stuff. And yeah, that works really, really well. It's gotten really mature, and I run the large model, so it's using half the RAM of one of those P4s. And then the second P4 is for that screwing around with, R1 or DeepSeek R1 or Stable Diffusion. I almost confused the 2 names there for a second. And yeah, so getting a bit more into AI, want a GPU box. I mean, I'm still hope that I can find a decent GPU at a decent price sometime soon. But I'm really not. I think at this point I've decided I'm going to save up the $3,000 to go buy an L4. Is it L4? Yeah, I think it's the L4, the most recent one that just came out last year. And it's a half height, half length that performs better than the P40 does with 24 gigs of RAM. So, yeah. All right, so that's my main upgrades. for like kind of the front of the rack, the main part of the rack, but there is one other upgrade that I'm going to touch on. And this is a bit of a sneak preview. So a few weeks ago, Jeff Geerling put out a video talking about NUT, Network UPS Tools, and how he's running NUT on a Pi to, you know, manage his or monitor his UPS and control power of his servers. And I thought to myself, that genius. I've been doing that for a long time. I should really share my crazy setup that uses the same sort of idea. Because this is a complicated beast. This is not just one server that has to shut down and start back up. There's a lot of work to get this thing to power on and power off, and I've kind of, for the last little while, had a hacky script that would do that. So his video inspired me to be like, okay, I'm going to clean up that script. I'm going to make sure it works. Now that I have new power, I can safely, you know, discharge and recharge my UPSs without worrying about overloading a circuit. Perfect time to work on all that. So M's got an upgrade and a downgrade, but I'll get to that. I bought a Pi Power 3 because I used to use just a USB battery pack thing that was always plugged in. I've managed to kill 2 of those doing that. So I wanted something new, something different, and I found the Pi Power 3, which is it's a Raspberry Pi hat that has like a lithium-ion battery, and it talks to the Pi and it acts as a UPS for just your Pi. And seemed like the best solution for this. So great, bought one, hooked it all up with my Pi 4, and suddenly my USB bus kept dropping all the time. I don't know if it's just the Pi failing or what, but it was not working. I could not monitor my UPSs when the USB bus dropped. So I had to swap it out for a Pi 3 that I just had lying around. So, I mean, upgrade with the Pi Power and a nice USB hub for all the UPS plugs. Downgrade for the Pi 3, but that's all this does. All this box does is run NUT and monitor the UPSs, so it doesn't need the power of a Pi 4. So, yeah. I'm not going to go too much more into that whole setup than what I've already shared, because I am going to do a full-length video on how that whole thing works. So stay tuned for that, if that's something that interests you. But yeah, that basically concludes my 2025 rack tour. So I hope you enjoyed it. Here's one more nice little shot of the rack, and I'll see you in the next video.